When I heard that Pokemon Go was increasing its level cap to level 80, I'm sure I wasn't the only one that thought, oh god, how much more XP is that going to be? Because when the game first came out, level 40 required 20 million XP, and then came along level 50, which required 176 million XP. That is a 780% increase for just going up 10 levels. So the thought of going up another 30 levels was pretty daunting, to say the least. And of course, the actual blog post announcing this doesn't give us any hard numbers at all, but it does give us a few hints, including the fact that this will be a rebalance and not just a straight expansion of the curve, and that gaining levels in general will go faster, that some trainers will actually increase in level after this rebalance is complete. And this is where the gears really started to turn, because using these hints and what I know about other Niantic games that have also had level cap increases, I think we can make a pretty accurate estimate as to how much XP we're gonna need to reach level 80. And I'll tell you right now, it's probably gonna be a lot lower than most people think, because this isn't just a rebalance for the release of level 80. I think they're also setting the stage for a future level 90, 100, and beyond. So what do we do with this information? Well, we need to start by looking at how they handled the last level cap increase. Pokemon Go launched with a max level of 40, then in 2020 they added another 10 levels, basically just following that same exponential scale as the first 40 levels. That also came with the introduction of XL candies and level 50 Pokemon and all this other stuff, but notably, this increase to level 80 will not include changes to Pokemon levels. I don't know why that wasn't stated in the blog itself, but some other outlets confirmed that that's going to be the case. But obviously they can't just keep going with the same exponential curve they've already established, because they would literally be off the charts. Like, you wouldn't be able to reach these XP amounts. But we already know that's not their plan. They want to rebalance the entire curve. So what is that going to look like? One option is just to take the curve that they have and just stretch it out an extra 30 levels. This would naturally lower the required XP per level, resulting in the jump in levels that the blog post describes. The higher your level, the bigger the jump after the update. A level 35 might instantly become a 40, while I think a level 50 player might jump straight to 70, considering that's the beginning of the new level up requirement tasks that we used to only have from level 40 to 50, but obviously those are also getting removed. This simple stretch also achieves the goal to have level ups happen faster, and if we continue this curve into the 80s, we start to see some very intense XP values into the hundreds of millions. We'll touch more on this in a second, but depending on how seriously you played this game since 2016, anything past 300 million XP will either sound absolutely unachievable, or you're someone that hit level 50 years ago and you're well past that now. Which brings me to my next question. Which crowd does Pokemon Go want to cater this update to? Because the current exponential curve definitely favors the hardcore crowd, but what if they're trying to move away from that? What would it look like to build an XP system that appeals more to casuals who are more likely to feel motivated by consistent level ups? And it turns out they've already tested this in some of their other games, specifically Pikmin Bloom, Peridot, and Monster Hunter Now. Let's take a look at Pikmin Bloom first. This is a graph showing the total XP required for each level up, which in this game is measured in steps. And the shape might look pretty similar to what we see in Pokemon Go until you see what starts to happen after level 100. Pikmin Bloom launched with only 100 levels at first, until just recently when they increased the cap to 130. But instead of continuing the exponential rate that they had established, these new levels are almost completely linear, with every level up requiring roughly 475,000 steps, with an extra few hundred added at the end just to make the number look different, I guess. But functionally, this basically just kills off the exponential momentum and makes it so that all future levels are just growing in this single, steady, straight line. And we'll get to why they would want to do this in a second. But let's also look at Peridot, one of Niantic's more experimental original IPs that you've either never heard of or forgot about. It launched with a level cap of 50, and at a glance, this XP curve looks exponential, but as you can see in the later levels, it starts to become much more linear like Pikmin Bloom. And when I saw this, I really thought I was onto something, because I know Peridot also got a level cap increase, and I expected that to look something like this, with that linear trend just continuing in a straight line. But after getting some help from the Peridot community directly, shout out to Bandy and Haunter26, I was able to plot the data from the level cap update and ended up with this, which was a little confusing to see coming right off that linear trend going right back into an exponent curve, until I learned that it wasn't long after this that they stopped updating the game completely. So you can literally see in the XP graph the story of a game that was trying to set up for long-term consistent content updates, only to realize they were reaching the end, so they decided to give their players just one big final cliff. I also thought this chart from Haunter26 was interesting because it shows the data in a slightly different way. Instead of showing the total amount of XP you've gained up to that point for each level. It only shows the new required XP for each level. And you can see how through the 40s you needed the same exact amount of XP per level up, but then I have no idea what's going on with the levels after that and why those values fluctuate so wildly. And they still go up. Like, I think these would still average out to make the same curve. I don't understand the logic of that or what's going on there. But obviously this is not something we would see in Pokemon Go. I don't think they have plans to shut it down anytime soon. But what about Monster Hunter now? What does their XP graph look like? Well, it looks like this. I'm not going to spend too long on this because I don't think there's any chance that Pokemon Go would use a system like this. But this is basically extreme linear leveling. So what you're looking at is ranges of levels that just require the same exact XP up until certain thresholds. And the result of this is just more levels happening more consistently. I've actually played Monster Hunter now for a while and I never noticed that this is how it works. And I guess it's nice that at super high ranks, there's still some kind of number differentiating the best from like the absolute very best. Whereas in Pokemon Go, it's like if everybody's level 50, you just kind of have to go like, are you like a new level 50 or are you like an over 1 billion XP level 50? But yeah, I don't think Pokemon Go is going to abandon their exponential curve, but I think for the later levels, and if they're going to go beyond 80, I would not be surprised to see levels more like this, where the amount of XP for each level is pretty similar, but just very high. But that still leaves the question, how much XP do we think it's going to take to hit level 80? And I've seen some pretty crazy estimates, mostly from hardcore players that might be a little detached from how the average player interacts with this game. Like, as much as it would make sense to cater to these players, because if they're spending a lot in the game and playing it the most, yeah, give them something to work on. But at the same time, the blog specifically mentioned that they were trying not to scare players out of grinding XP, that they noticed a lot of people were giving up. So anybody that thinks they're going to raise the XP requirement to like 800 million or above a billion is just, I think, a little bit crazy. Like, yeah, a lot of trainers hit 50 within months of the cap being released, and that was 5 years ago. Like, it's not uncommon to see longtime players that have since doubled or tripled their XP since then. But for every one person I know that is level 50, there are 5 others that aren't even close. And I'm not even pulling that number out of thin air. I just went through my own friends list of over 400 people, and only 73 of them were level 50. That's 17% of players on my friends list. And I'm sure my sample is biased since I'm friends with a lot of hardcore players. And while I myself don't play the game quite as much as I used to, I'm also level 50, and I almost have enough XP to hit level 50 again. But my point is, I wouldn't be surprised if the actual percentage of players at 50 is less than 10%. So here's what I think they're going to do. I believe they're going to split the difference and try to appeal to both crowds. They're keeping the familiar exponential scale, but they're going to stretch it over more numbers so that casual players can feel good being like, oh wow, look how many levels I just went up for free, and oh, the next level doesn't seem so far away. Meanwhile, level 70 will be the equivalent to what level 40 was when the Go Beyond update first dropped, requiring not just a lot more XP, but also other requirements and achievements that you have to meet. The main difference being this time, the closer we get to level 80, we'll actually start to notice less and less of an increase of required XP as we're slowly weaned on to this new linear progression system, just like Pikmin Blooms, which, by the way, did you hear about the new weekly challenge feature that's coming? It's basically like the party system, except that it lasts a week instead of a few hours, and you can do it with your friends remotely. Yeah, that's the same exact system that Pikmin Bloom had 3 years ago. And like I said before, this is why I think the total XP to hit 80 will be a lot lower than what people are expecting, because if that exponential growth only applies from levels 1 to 70, that leaves room for only 10 levels of linear XP growth before we hit level 80. And this is where I say again, we don't actually know any numbers. I'm just speculating based on the old XP curve and extrapolating that data in a way that I think makes sense. But if you think the conclusion I'm about to reveal is wrong, I would love to hear your theories in the comments. With all these things considered and mapped out, I believe that we will only need about 350 million total XP, or roughly double what it took to get to level 50. And while the hardcore player in me feels like that sounds too low and easy, to me I could see them thinking it just sounds better to say that the total amount of XP to max out your level in Pokemon Go was doubled. I think anything more than that might just intimidate casuals from even trying at all. And it also sounds appealing to people that might have hit 50 and then just stopped playing. If you're basically saying, hey, all you have to do is hit 50 again. And if they actually do this, if they only double the amount of required XP, or maybe even go a little bit further, let's say like 500 million isn't out of the question, I think that's a very telling sign that they plan to increase the level cap again very soon. I don't know if that means we're going to see new levels by the 10th anniversary next year. That does sound a little bit too soon, but not even entirely off the table. And if you're listening to this as a hardcore player and you wanted a bigger challenge, like I totally get it. I think the bigger thing to worry about though is the brand new level up tasks from level 70 to 80. I think these have a potential to be absolutely nightmarish, not just for difficulty, but also in terms of just getting insanely paywalled, especially coming fresh off the release of Eternatus, an event that FOMO'd players into dropping a car payment's worth of microtransactions in a single weekend, just to ensure that they could make the number go up on what is the strongest dragon poison type in the game before it disappeared forever, even though the very next day they said it would be back. And even if you did max one out, it turns out he is only the strongest in a handful of very specific scenarios, and in most cases gets outclassed by other existing Pokemon anyway. I do fear Pokemon Go is going to be very comfortable setting the paywall higher and higher with every new feature that arrives. And in a game where the remaining number of new Pokemon is running dry, shinies and hundos are no longer rare because of events and bottle caps, what else is left for a player base to flex on each other than their own big number? And what if we can continue to dangle that carrot of big number every year with more and more level cap increases? There can only be so many Pokemon, but number go big forever. Anyway, all that said, I still do love Pokemon Go. There's nothing else in the world that is quite like it, and I hope future updates won't be as greedy, and I really hope I'm wrong about some of this stuff, but I can't even pretend that I'm not at least a little bit excited about getting back into an XP grind. Like I said, I play pretty casually these days. I basically just show up for big events. I never really felt the temptation to spend my time or money outside of that. But the 2 times I played this game the hardest was at launch when I first raced to get to level 40, and then again in 2020 with the race to get to level 50. These were the times that I genuinely had the most fun playing the game. But after I hit level 50 in 2021, all that just stopped. I felt like I was done. And I still enjoy seeing new features come to the game, and I'm still invested in eventually finishing my Pokedex, but I don't feel rushed to do that. This game has proven that everything comes back eventually, and I have no delusions about trying to keep up with getting every single shiny, costume, or background. I just have my own goals and my own ways of enjoying the game at my own pace. And I recommend that you figure out what those are for yourself too. Don't give in to FOMO or peer pressure, and just have fun. Oh, and also, if you don't hit level 50 before this update drops in October, you're forever going to lose access to all these highly coveted avatar items, and they'll be gone forever. So have fun with that, okay? Bye!